everyone. Welcome to Find It, where we're finding something. And every week I have a guest to help us find it, to inspire us to find something maybe we're missing in our life. And tonight I have a special guest, as we always do, Brian Hess. He is an amazing person. I've been following him on his podcast. He has a lot to say, and it's so what we need in the world right now. And he's a great leader. He's a business owner, a father, a husband. And we're going to show a little intro for him, and then he'll be right back with us. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm great, man. What a cool video. That was awesome. Thank you.
Well, yeah, we have to have a good video for a great man. We can't just like bring you in here all like that. But I wanted to talk to you. I wanted you to share with everyone that, you know, you're a husband, you have 4 children. What are their names?
So Paisley, Kingston, Quincy, and Preston.
Yes.
And they are
those up. I love those names.
Yeah, they are 10, almost 8, 5, and almost 3.
And then your wife is Lori.
My wife is Lori.
And let me just pop this up real fast again so everyone can get a really good look at this gorgeous family right now. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. So precious.
I'm a lucky guy. That picture just got replaced above our mantle with a newer family picture.
Right.
That one is last holiday season, so we'll have a new holiday picture.
Yeah, you have a new one up. But, you know, I would love for you just to get our guests, our audience acquainted with who you are and what you do and let's start with where you're living. Tell them where you live right now.
Yeah, so I live in Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania, which is just north of the city of Pittsburgh. So born and raised in Western Pennsylvania. Son of a steel worker. My mom stayed at home, just had a traditional family. I have one brother that's older. Lived most of my life here. I moved for a quick stint in Ohio, in Eastern Ohio, right outside of Youngstown. And then I lived in South Florida for 5 years. But Western Pennsylvania has been home for most of my life. So I own a couple of businesses. I'm co-founder and CEO of the Pavement Group. So we're a nationwide asphalt and concrete provider. We provide asphalt and concrete solutions for most of the larger businesses that you guys would go into. A lot of the retailers or shopping malls or restaurants, hotels, the people that deliver your packages, we do work for those folks. And our job is to reduce the costs and frustrations that come along with managing large portfolios of buildings, parking lots, things like that. And then I also founded Top Contractor School. So we have several hundred contractors that have gone through our programs, and we educate them on how to grow and scale a business, dominate their market, do things like this, live streaming, marketing, anything related to that. So serial entrepreneur, but being a husband and father always comes first, of course, and man of faith for sure. God has blessed me beyond what I ever thought was possible in my life. So all glory to him. And that's it. I just love my life and love doing things like this and sharing experiences. So many people did it for me along the way. Yeah. And so I enjoy taking the time to do things like this and give back. And I appreciate you having me on.
Oh my gosh. And I appreciate you taking the time because I know how insanely busy you are, but I also watched your podcast and I saw a podcast about busy versus productivity. You know, a lot of people say they're busy, but are you producing? What are you getting done? You know, I love and this is what I want our audience to understand. You know, he's talking about, I have a pavement company and I'm doing all these things. But the beautiful thing about you is you're so well-rounded and you're a business owner. You have a podcast. You have several business. I mean, the Contractor School, I'd love for you to explain to people what that actually is. I mean, it's people, all these contractors coming together that you teach, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah. So we have a weekly call. So, every single week, we have 2 different groups that we run. So we have Top Contractor School Elite and then Top Contractor School Inner Circle. So the Elite program meets on Tuesdays and the Inner Circle program on Wednesdays. And the Inner Circle group, which you showed a clip from me on stage at one of our retreats. So we have 2 retreats every year. So generally speaking, June or July and January. And so we try to go to cool places. The last one was at Heinz Field. Sorry, Debbie, home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so prior to that, we were at the JW Marriott Marco Island. So we were in the warm weather in January. Prior to that, we were in Fort Lauderdale on the beach. And then this coming January, we've already secured the venue, and we're going to the Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. So we really pour in, man. We have a lot of great speakers that come in. We've had Mitzi Perdue, who I think you're familiar with. So she was a speaker at the last one. I had one of my buddies from high school who was a veteran in the NFL I think he played for 11 years. Prior to that, we had Ben Newman, another big name speaker. And this upcoming one, I can't tell you who it is, but I will just tell you that the speaker that we recently signed to be the keynote at this event is literally a hero of mine. And so it's pretty cool to be able to bring those people who are, long distance mentors to the group and the family that we've created at Top Contractor School. So that really started out as a dream of mine to be able to give back to the contractors that help the Pavement group, like that help our company grow and scale. We couldn't do it without those people across the country that really, go out and do the work for us in the markets where we have the work to do. And so for me, it was important to help them grow their local businesses so that they could be more successful and in turn become better contractors than they are today for us. And so that has evolved from in the beginning, me thinking like, man, I can teach these people sales and marketing and leadership, the things that I worked on my whole life and really dove into from a mentorship standpoint and studied a lot, to everybody always wanted and needed more resources and structure and HR forms and things like that, like all the things that it takes to run a business. They were really non-existent in the contractor space, and it's really hard to get that information. And so in the beginning of my career, I was watching all these, consultants and things, and there were plenty of consultants that could help, but they were really expensive and hard to get access to. And so I wanted to be able to bring that to as many contractors as possible, so that the contractors that don't necessarily have the business experience, but have really good skills on the trade side, could get the education and access to the education necessary to be able to become a well-rounded business owner themselves. So that was the mission of Top Contractor School. And it's grown well beyond what I imagined in the beginning, right? It was just a hope and a dream and a mission to serve people. And it's really turned into something incredible. So now we have a board of directors that really guides the direction of Top Contractor School. To? Yeah. And so we've got just tons of powerful people. And, I like to say this, like when you come to one of our retreats, I think the coolest thing is you walk in that room and it feels like, almost like you're at church, right? Just a bunch of people.
Oh, I love that.
Loving on you and, just anybody that needs anything at all. There's people there to help, and people, with 30, 40 years experience in companies that are doing, $40, $50 million down to, $1 million, and they're all, interacting and trying to help each other.
But I have a question. So I have two, and I'm just going to ask them both, and then you can handle it from there. But the fact that you created the Top Contractor School because you saw there was a need, and also it was helping build a relationship with the people you have to work with. And then did you think of that on your own? And then how did you implement it? And then my second question is this. When you go into these retreats and it feels like church and everyone's loving on each other, that is, to me, speaks volumes about your leadership. Do you agree with that?
So the answer to the first part is, it's really a step-by-step process, right? Like I think in any entrepreneurial journey, you have an idea. It's kind of crazy now to look back, 4.5 years ago and look at the date that the logo was created, the days that the website was registered, things like that. And to think like, where your mind is in that moment of really just having an idea and then watching that idea grow and evolve into what it is today. And so that's the top contractor school side. So the pavement group side, I had a much clearer vision for where, that would and could go. So that was easier to kind of, just process through. And, our team at the pavement group always says that, they didn't think we would get this big, but if you asked me, I would say, I told you so, right? That there was an opportunity for that. But I think in any entrepreneur's journey, there are things that come up. There are twists and turns in business that you have to embrace. And sometimes that's massive growth. In some cases, that's retraction. If you're going the wrong direction, or, you hit a bump in the road that sends you the wrong way, you have to be willing to pivot. And that's really the joy and the variety that entrepreneurship and building businesses brings. And I think, that's why I always say it's not for everyone, because not everyone can deal with change at the pace that it happens sometimes. But for me, it's really cool to be able to look back and say, man, these businesses, both very successful and both really grew alongside each other and complemented each other really well, to be able to create, and somebody put in the comments here, to create a culture that, just bonds a lot of contractors together. And, what I saw that was missing, to your point, I saw there was no interconnectivity when it came to contractors. Nobody wanted to share ideas. Everybody was really closed off. And what a terrible idea, right? Everything can be shared, and it's not, business isn't a zero-sum game. So if I win, you don't have to lose. There's plenty of opportunity and plenty of success out there for everybody.
I love
It's all about how we view it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second part is, I am a big believer in culture, leadership, all of those things. And I do believe that, John Maxwell calls it the law of the picture. People do what people see. And so I do believe that us as individuals, we set a tone for how any organization is going to be. So, how compassionate we are, how empathetic we are, how motivated we are, how, just everything about how we behave as people wears off on those people around us. And so I do believe that to some degree. I think that it also is reliant on the other individuals that round out that community or that team. So it's never just about the leader. It's always about the people that the leader attracts, right? But you end up attracting who you are, right? So the really cool thing about Top Contractor School was when I interviewed people for our Inner Circle program. So the elite program came first, but I wanted to interview the folks that would be in the Inner Circle program. It was really important to create the right culture and maintain the right culture in that group. And when I got off, I interviewed 16 companies, the founders of 16 companies, to enter that program. And 16 out of 16 said two things: that number one, they didn't just want to take from the group, they wanted to give, because they felt like they had a lot to give. And the second thing that all 16 mentioned was that faith was important to them. And I got off the phone and I walked out of my office and said to my wife, I don't know how this happened, but this is pretty crazy. It's pretty amazing that those would be the things that people all said consistently. And that's true in that group to this day, right? Everybody that joins it has a passion to give, and also has a very strong foundation of faith. Like we have a chaplain for Top Contractor School that does a daily devotional when we have our retreats. In fact, he does a daily devotional now every single day called the Get to Work devotional. Talking about, different Bible verses and why it's important for you to understand what they mean and then how they can implement into business.
That's so cute.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's a pretty cool journey, but definitely everything that you said is true. It's like, leadership does matter. And I think in this day and age in the world, it's more important than ever for us to have really sound leaders that set a great example. And none of us are perfect by any means. We all make mistakes, but to have that foundation of something solid that we can depend on and a steady hand that we can go to when we need something is really important.
Have you ever found yourself with an employee that didn't end up meeting the mark and kind of was brought it down, and you had to either work with them on getting better or let go?
Yeah, I mean, there's always people. One of the things that I always say in our company that we want to always be the company that gives too many chances, not the one that doesn't give enough.
I like that.
And we live by that. There's always going to be people that do something that violates the core values of the company or does something that's irreversible or something like that. But it's few and far between, to be honest. In my career, it happens not that often. And when it does, I will just say this: it's all about how you handle that situation, how open and honest you are with that person. Because if we don't explain to them the reasoning behind what it is and leave them with a lesson, then that will be for nothing, right? They will not have learned anything if we don't tell the truth, if we're not open and we're not honest, and we don't embrace the conflict that comes along with whatever that may be. We don't give that person, we steal their opportunity to learn from something that's happened. And so that's a big thing for me is open and honest, transparent communication. And that's from the time that somebody gets hired to whenever, if they decide to leave us or we decide to part ways with them, it's very important for them to know where they stand and have every opportunity to grow and understand what it is that they need to do to grow.
I'm smiling because I agree with you, but I also see Lynn in the back room always clapping like, yes, preach. But so I just, I think all of us are getting a real sense of who you are as a man. I'd like to get your definition of what is a great leader.
Man, that's a lengthy question. I'll try to keep it short. For me, leadership is about being a steady hand, right? It's about, when I always say this to the folks in TCS and to the leaders that are on my team, like we don't get credit for the way that we lead when things are good, right? We only get credit for how we lead when things are off. And so it's about those uncertain times that people really look to leadership, right? And so leadership to me is mentorship, right? It's being a mentor, but also realizing at every moment that you're a mentor, you're also a mentee. It's about learning from each other. And regardless of how advanced that person is, there's always an opportunity for you to learn something from the opposite, right? So if you're the mentor, you can always learn from the mentee, and you should listen and pay attention as a great leader, because there's always something more that you can gain from that relationship. And the other part is, it's the leader sets the course, right? They have to have vision. They have to know where they're going, and they have to be able to cast that vision so that every person on that team or in that organization feels like their hopes and dreams can fit inside of the vision of that company. Because if they don't, they won't stay, right? And so I think it's stability, vision, and really just being a great mentor to as many people as you can. They say if you want to grow, you lead followers, and if you want to multiply, you lead leaders, right? And you create more leaders. And so that to me is what good leaders do. They create more leaders, they delegate, they empower people, and they allow people to grow into whatever it is that they dream of doing in their own lives.
Yes, I love that. I love, let's just like key points that really resonated with me is you really look to a great leader when times aren't going the best. When things are clicking along, oh yeah, everything's going great. When the wheels fall off, you need to have a great leader there to kind of pick up the pieces, put the wheels back on and say, we're going to keep rolling. But then, additionally, communication and a steady hand, and to create as a leader, to create other leaders. That's huge, Brian, because, when you're with even someone, and something else you said earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt you. And sometimes if I don't interrupt, I don't remember what I wanted to say, but you were talking about the fact that, it made me feel like how you are as probably a father too, about when you lead by example and you communicate why this employee is not meeting the mark, and the reasons, and then give them the opportunity to understand and make that change. I love that. And so what you do in business, I'm sure it also translates for you in your home life. I feel like you're the type of person that your integrity and the way you live your life, you can use that if whether it's in business or with family. It's all the same thing, just it's different, but it's the same concept. I love it.
Yeah, principles don't change, right?
Yeah.
Values don't change, and somebody said it here, but leaders are in a fishbowl, and as a parent, you are, and so you have to watch what you do because
Yeah.
they're always watching, and they want to be more like you than you realize. That is the way that our children see the world, is through their mother and father, and so at some point, it was actually the reason that I wanted to start a business at such an old age, right? Like most people don't start a business at 38 years old. But for me, I wanted to be able to show my children like anything is possible, and don't ever give up on something that means something to you. It doesn't matter when that happens in your life, like you can achieve anything that you want. And so, to be able to go after that at 38 years old with 3 children and a wife that stayed home with those children, it was a big risk, but to demonstrate that risk can have reward if you work hard enough and you stay focused and you do the right things every day. That means a lot to me because I know that they're watching, right? And so as they see what happens in our family, hopefully that gives them the hope and motivation and dreams to be able to go out and do whatever it is that they want.
Yeah, of course. And I had read a book when I was a very young mother, and it was children are what they live. So you can tell people, in work and business or at home, do this, do that, do that. But if you're not doing it, you're not a good leader, and the kids are what they see you do typically. So I think that's really cool. But the other thing, once again, guys, he has this podcast. I want y'all to tune in and watch. Well, also, Lynn, I put his website, his link tree in here somewhere if you can find it, and roll that along the bottom too, if you could do that. So that everyone that's watching, like he is just every single time I listen to your podcast and you start the topic and I'm like, oh, I know about that. No, you say certain things that are like, ooh, yeah, yeah. And just like, I watched one of them that was talking about, which one was it? About whether I know what it was. When to use power. You might have the power. You don't always have to use it. You got to know when to and not. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, this goes back to a leadership conversation, right? It's, power is not always meant to be used. The fact that you have it, it's very sensitive and very selective as to when you should and shouldn't use it. And in a lot of times, I say this often to my business advisor that I work with, like we say to each other, do you ever feel like everything in the world is actually opposite, right? Like when somebody does something that is out of character and the natural thing to do would be to correct them. If you have the right people on your team, they should be able to figure out that they did something wrong. They don't always need your reminder, right? And even if they get your reminder, how that's delivered, with grace or by using your power and potentially offending or disrespecting somebody, the delivery of that matters. And so how we choose to use, the inferred or defined power that we have as individuals or as leaders or as business owners really defines us as a person. And that's how I believe that's how people will remember us. That's what our legacy ends up being, is how we choose to interact with others, because I can only be responsible for my own actions, right? And my own, how I show up, how somebody responds to me is not my responsibility. It's how I show up. And, if I can offer grace in the moments where people need it, it generally means a lot to people. And I think you benefit far more than you'll ever lose. Not to say that it always works, because there's always an exception to everything. But I would say the majority of the time, people appreciate the grace, and they appreciate, maybe you wait a week to have a conversation about something that happened. Maybe you wait a few days, maybe you wait a day, and maybe you do it outside the office instead of inside the office to change the medium of how that's delivered. But how we use our power really matters. And when we choose not to use it, it can actually be the most powerful.
Brian, what did you, so I'm thinking too, this is a hugely successful business, to, all of your businesses and the way they mirror one another and work for each other with the top contractor and the pavement. But what did you do prior to this? And then you said, I want to start my own business at 38. What were you doing prior to this?
So I spent most of my adult life, so my 20s into my early 30s, I worked in corporate America. So I was a technology guy. I ended up working for Verizon Wireless, and so I worked my way through the ranks at Verizon and got into the outside sales channel. So in the small business sector, most of what we sell to were construction companies, right? That was the biggest core of the small business sector is construction. And so I had relocated from Pittsburgh to South Florida, and the very first appointment that I went on was with a construction company, and the guy happened to be originally from Pittsburgh. And so I ended up leaving my corporate career and going to work for this guy for several years. And, as I got into the industry, I just started looking, and I always, from the time I was a little boy, I always had dreams of like having my own company. And, nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. So I took the normal route of, get a great job, work your tail off, and, get as high as you possibly can in the company. And I was working my way through that process. And I got into construction, and, my dad was a blue collar, steel worker. And I just loved the culture of construction. I loved the people and how real they were. And so as I started to, kind of settle into the construction industry, I was pretty successful in sales in the industry. And so I thought to myself, man, there's so much missing in technology. There's so much missing when it comes to culture and how companies are built in construction. I would really love to be able to do this on my own. And as I, got into the industry further, it just became more clear to me that that was something that eventually I should try to do. And literally, I was working for a company that ended up getting sold. And I had to make a decision, like, am I going to go work for this new company that's acquiring this company, or am I going to take the leap and go out on my own? And so,
wow, that was brave.
Yeah. So I took the jump, and we never looked back.
And 4.5 years later, not even 5 years later, you're like, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's such a success story. But what was it about that guy? That contracting, what you made your way, you're, obviously really good, in sales and technology. And then what was it about that company or the man that you had a connection with that was your first customer that made you want to make the jump to construction company?
Yeah. So I think it was really a better fit for me personally, like culturally. When I worked in corporate America, no matter how successful you were, it always felt, disconnected or not, not warm, right? It was just
I agree.
not an environment. And so I saw that as an opportunity to, get more stability and opportunity for my family. I had just met my wife, and we were, talking about having a family, getting married. And so I thought to myself, like, man, if I stay in corporate America, the only way to move up is to move around the country, right? To always be relocating. And that didn't seem like something I wanted to do. And so I thought, man, this is an opportunity to get, a bigger opportunity to earn, and, the ability to have a little bit more control. And so it was really a step towards entrepreneurship without my own awareness, just
Right.
like taking that leap to get into small business, as opposed to what most people would view as a very stable and successful corporate job. And as I did it, I was like, man, this is a lot simpler than I thought it was, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, when you don't own a business or you've never owned a business or been around it, you think
It's
it's so
scary.
complicated. And you realize that like the people that own these really successful businesses, they're just like you and me. They're not anybody special. I'm not anybody special. I just, you know, ask a lot of questions, get the right mentorship and guidance, and you know, get to know a lot of people, treat people right. And when you get the right advice, it's step by step. You can do anything that you want. And so I think what attracted me to answer your question was like just an opportunity to have something different. You know, I had a multiple six-figure corporate job, and to most people, that's a crazy choice, right? To take that jump. But I saw it as like a step in the direction of freedom and my own creativity, and just a larger opportunity to discover my own potential, I guess.
I just think it's it goes in alignment with who you are, where you decided you were staying true to yourself and what ultimately was going to match up with who you are. And so I think that's really cool. And the fact that you've taken your personal, ethics, integrity, and what you saw what was missing, and in construction companies, and then being able to create your own and implement a beautiful culture where people do feel that warmth, and like you care about everyone that works for you. I've been noticing you've been doing a lot of hiring. I saw a bunch of people and you're giving them shout outs, and so nice. And it does. I would think anyone would want to work for your company. I mean, knowing the culture and the way it is, and quality of life is so important. And if you love going to work and you love the people you're around, you feel like you're around a big family, who wouldn't love that? You know? I wanted to ask you, and I could keep this going for a long time, but I've been trying to shorten my podcast because I can get a little chatty. But I want to ask you about you saying, and once again, the podcast people, you got to look him up. Um, the fact that you said ask for help. If you need help, or you need, don't be so proud, or ask for help. So just tell us a little bit how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think, you know, everybody can give help and everybody needs help. And so I think that, you know, sometimes we live in a world, and especially in construction, you know, I always say, you know, ego is sometimes our worst enemy, right? Not wanting to ask for help
Right.
because we feel like somehow that lowers us. When in all reality, it lowers your progress. It slows your progress if you don't ask for help when you need it. And you know, to me, mentorship has been one of the greatest gifts of my life. It's how
Yeah.
I've learned so much in such a short period of time. You know, I read a lot of books. I seek out the right mentors, and I have them in different areas of my life. Right. So I have, you know, a mentor in the fitness space. I have a mentor in business. I have a culture mentor. I have, you know, just a multitude of people that help me with different things. And they really help me be able to do things a lot faster. And so if you don't ask questions, you are hurting yourself and anybody else that depends on you, you know, whether it's somebody that works alongside of you, your leadership, or somebody that works for you. Right.
Mhm.
And so to me, I see a lot of that in the world, people hesitating to ask. And if you don't ask, you don't receive. And when you don't receive information, everybody loses, right? Because you could be doing something wrong that you have to do over again instead of getting it right the first time. And so in our company, we just believe in open communication, and
Yeah.
you know, there is no such thing as a bad question. um, Ask. The worst thing that somebody can do is remind you of what they've already told you, right? Which, if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes.
Yeah.
But to me, I think it's something I see far too often, people being hesitant to ask and ending up in the wrong place as a result of that, and that seems foolish to me.
Yeah, and the fact too is it seems to me, even like with mental health and women who are postpartum, or they are overwhelmed with raising a family, or in so many different ways, in so many different areas, people don't want to ask for help. And it can be for a multitude of reasons why they don't want to. But what I appreciate that you do is to let your employees know there isn't a dumb question. We want to help one another. And the fact that you have those open lines of communication and at being able and feel okay about asking a question, I think it's just really good to enforce it and to make it a conversation like you've done when I watched on your podcast. Like, you can talk a whole 20 minutes on how important it is to be able to ask a question. I just think that's genius. I'm like, it's so true. Like, we need it, things, real things in life that seem like, oh, it is a big deal. There are a lot of people who just will not ask for help, and then they suffer, and then their families suffer, and it just goes all along the line there. But so, Brian, I really think a lot of you. You don't even know how much I think of you and how much I watch and learn from what the information that you put out. But I want to ask, because the show is called Find It, finding something that inspires other people in your life, a lesson or something that you have found that has been profound for you that you can share with us, so maybe we can find it too.
The first thing that comes to mind is that I feel like, the word conflict has had such a bad connotation placed on it, right? Like, just when you hear that word, conflict with another person, conflict with a coworker, conflict with your spouse, it seems negative. But what I've learned a lot over the last few years is the value of respectful conflict, right? Just having conversations. And sometimes those can, even get heated at times. What I say in our company is, I would rather us have an argument, which doesn't happen very often, but have an argument that ends in a result that gets us to a place that allows us to understand each other better, than avoiding conflict and really just learning to resent each other. And that's, the thing that I see most often in the world is that we've created these technology platforms that allow us to go find the people that just agree with us and stay there. And it's really created a lot of bad scenarios for people in their lives, their businesses, and everywhere. And so if there's one thing I could teach people that's been the most valuable to me, is not to avoid conflict, to, embrace it and deliver whatever it is that you have to say to somebody that might seem like conflict. Just deliver it in the most respectful and graceful way possible, with as much care and love as you can. And people will absolutely love you for it. Even if it's not in the moment, over time, those people will really appreciate, because what I've learned is that not a lot of people are open enough to embrace conflict. And so those people that are willing to give you that feedback, they end up being the people that you respect and appreciate the most, because it just doesn't come around that often. And so the people in my life that are willing to tell me, when I'm wrong, or give me a different perspective, or, argue with me in some cases, I appreciate that, because it helps me become a more well-rounded person. And it doesn't mean that they're always right, but I always appreciate the fact that they're willing to do it.
That's very good. I appreciate that too, because I've been doing a lot of talking with different people about and like I told you, on Tuesday nights, Bob Donnell and Lynn, and it's the Lynn and Scott show, and it was all about, you don't have to understand to be understanding, and it's also okay to agree to disagree. But I always find also, Brian, that when you are open to hear others' perspective, you do learn something from that. And you may not agree with them, but you're like, oh, okay, get it. I get it. And now I'm growing as a human being because of it. We don't have to fight. The world is in a horrible place if people conflict in a bad way, because it doesn't seem to have any resolve. So I appreciate that. I am so grateful. And you did a podcast on gratefulness too. You guys just you gotta hit him up. I'm telling you, he's amazing. I mean, you got to come back and watch me at 8 p.m., but he's on at 8 a.m. So, but anyway, thank you. And I want to thank all the people who have piped in with questions and comments and what have watched us. I so appreciate the support. And with that, we are going to say, see you later, Brian. I'll be watching your podcast forevermore. Good luck. Keep doing what you're doing. You're making such a beautiful difference in the world. Appreciate you. And Lynn, let's show the outro.